Welcome, everyone, to ExExecs. We are three former executive leaders for various organizations, and we are here to give you the benefits of our experiences, our mistakes, and our joys through our working life. Today, we have a very special guest, Hania, who I'm going to ask Robin to introduce in a second. But just for the rest of the team, my name is John. I'm a former headmaster and school principal. Tarek is a former world banker. He's a global trotter who has a distinguished career in banking, but also now in lecturing. And Robin is a former executive with in many various places. I didn't realize you've been to St. Lucia as well as Saudi.
I did start. That was my first posting. Was St. Lucia. Yeah, we'll talk about that one day.
Fantastic. I asked myself the question, if we three fellas got stuck on a desert island, what would be our various contributions to staying alive? Tarek would sing us a song. He'd probably write us a song, in fact. Robin would make us walk all the way around the island to make sure that we've got plenty of exercise. And I would do gags. That's what I would do, and keep the conversation going. Robin, would you like to introduce Hania to our audience today?
Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome Hania. Hania and myself have known each other for, I was trying to work out the other day, but I reckon about 20 years. But we worked really closely for 4 or 5 years when I was regional COO in Dubai and Hania was COO in Egypt. And we dealt with many crises, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. But Hania, we'd love to hear from you and give us an intro, please.
So it's a pleasure to be with you on this podcast. As you said, Robin, I've been the COO for Egypt for 10 years, the last 10 years of my career. And during this time, we experienced a lot of crises in Egypt, starting with unrest in 2011, followed by the Muslim Brotherhood, the liquidity crisis, a lot of things that we have experienced. And as you said, John, we're here to share our experiences, tell you not what went right, but what we learned from all those various experiences.
Hania, thank you. Thank you for that. And your seniority and the unique perspective you bring will be very interesting to us. I'm going to ask Tarek to focus our conversation on crisis management with our first question.
Okay. Thank you, John. First of all, ahlan, Hania. Lovely to have you on the team with us for this podcast. As a fellow, not only Egyptian, but also AUC, and we both went to the same university in Egypt, and I think we ended up both in banking, so it's an interesting background. So I'm curious, what is the first big experience that you had with a crisis? And was there any sort of scenario planning beforehand, or did it just happen and you had to sort out things? And what did you learn from all that? So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. What was the first big one?
So one of the first lessons learned in the crisis is that no matter how hard and how well prepared you are, there are always surprises that take place. So what happened on the day of the 28th of January on 2011 is that we woke up and we found that there is no internet, there are no mobile phones. And basically our crisis was built on having our contact list was based on the mobile phones, because since the introduction of mobile phones in Egypt in maybe 1994 or around that time, everybody, parked the landlines aside and we all used the mobiles. And of course, our systems, everything depended on the internet. So we just woke up at 9 in the morning, we found that the communication is lost. And this was one thing that wasn't planned in the crisis plan or in the drills that we had. So we had to improvise. We had to resort to landlines. We didn't have an updated list of landlines. So we worked out, I digged up an old phone book and I started calling the people on the crisis team and getting mobile numbers from them. Some of the numbers we got were not the right numbers, but I worked a piece of paper on which I wrote all the numbers and we were able to get in touch. And fortunately, my landline was the right one that was given to the region. So I received a call from the regional head of security, just making sure that this is the right number and that he can access me through this. So that was, lesson number one. You have to stay calm, you have to think and work out what to do in such a situation. I mean, you don't get lost. The most important thing in crisis is staying calm and being resilient. I think this is one of the most important lessons that we can share. And systems fail. I mean, this is a fact of life. No matter how hard you plan, no matter how well you plan, there is always a gap that you haven't thought of.
Especially, I guess, also as a bank, as a regulated industry with the central bank, and you have people, because it went on for quite a period of time, and people, if I remember correctly, couldn't access their cash at ATMs, and there was all kinds of struggles, because how are you going to pay for food? How are you going to pay for your... So you have a consumer, but you also have the safety of your staff.
Yes.
You're worried about where are they safe, et cetera, et cetera. So very challenging.
Those 2 points
Can I, Hania, just let me explore one thing that you mentioned, because I think this is really, really key in crisis management. I'm really interested in, John and Tarek, on your view on this, is you use the word calm. Now, when you're a chief operating officer, for example, which we both were, how did you stay calm? Because inside, you don't feel calm, right? Inside, you're panicking, but you have to be calm in front of your staff. What was your trick for that? How did you maintain that very calm disposition?
It's very difficult, as you say, because you have to. It's internal. I mean, you keep your fears, your stress, you keep everything inside you, but you have to be mindful that the people who are supporting you, they look at you and they get their confidence from you. So if you reflect the panic that you have inside, it will be very difficult. So it took a lot of effort, Robin, I have to tell you. And I wasn't aware that I was doing it until one of the staff, a senior member of the staff in the corporate team, he walked into my office and he told me, emotional stability. You exhibit emotional stability. And that clicked, and I understood that it reflects on them and that it is very important because it gives them the confidence that they require to continue with the operations. So as you said, it's extremely difficult, but you have to be mindful of this all the time.
I agree.
Hania, that's a remarkable character strength that you have, and no doubt it's something that you've developed over the years. I want to talk to you something related to that. Is how do you choose who is in the room, the top echelon for managing a crisis?
That's another difficult question because it doesn't come with the position. Some people are in the position, but they're not the right people to react in a crisis mode. So in certain cases, I went to the number 2 because I felt that the number 2 was more reliable. He would react more in a correct manner. It's a regulated industry. We were receiving a lot of instructions. We had to act on them very quickly. And also, John, you have to be mindful of another thing, that people, their reactions to crisis differ. So somebody who is very senior could not react to the crisis in the same manner as his number 2, for example. Or he can be sort of carried away in the day-to-day life because, of course, the crisis also affected our personal lives. So he can be, carried away in his own problems and not really focusing on the crisis. So another very important thing is that you know your team and you know who you can rely on in a crisis mode, because this comes very handy. I remember, I had to, in a certain area, I used to have the discussions for half an hour, for example, when we received new regulations from the central bank with the number 2. And then I would ask this person to update, or I would update the number 1 just out of courtesy. I knew whom to rely on.
Another, just going back to that sort of mindset and how you control your emotions. I always remember the big frustration I used to have, Hania, was let's imagine a big IT outage, and we dealt with many of these, right? Big IT outage, everything's gone down. You've got the CEO put you under pressure for regular updates. You've got the regulator put you under pressure for regular updates. You've sent your team away to investigate. how do you resist the temptation to call them every 30 seconds? Because what you have to do is you have to give them time. You have to give them time to get on with things, but you want regular updates. But of course, that's not productive all the time. I used to pace around my office sometimes. I mean, how did you resist that temptation to continually call them and ask them for updates?
Sometimes I went down and just checked on them, to be very honest with you, Robin. But again, as you said, I mean, I started my career in IT, and I know that when I have a problem, I don't need the whole senior team on my back. So I need my time, I need my space, and so on. With respect to the CEO and the regulator, I mean, you have to communicate. You have to tell them that we are aware of the problem. We are working on it. We will keep you informed. Don't be silent. Give them something. Give them an extended timeline. Let you know in 4 hours because the team is working on it. But you have to give the team their space to be able to attend to the crisis. So communication is key with everyone.
Yeah, agreed.
Actually, Hania, you touched on something I think that's quite important. If you have the opportunity in the middle of the crisis as a leader to be visible, like you said, I go down and check on them, right? If that act by being seen and amongst the troops, if you will, I think gives quite a lot of confidence. But if you can't be physically because people are working remotely or in different places, then I think giving them the space, as you say, delegating, giving them the space, giving them the confidence, I trust you, you can do this, but also somehow finding ways to be supportive. I'm here when you need me, just reach out, right? So I think those elements are quite important in a crisis because otherwise you're seen as being completely, disconnected or not supportive or whatever, right?
As I said earlier, I mean, your team is looking at you and they are getting their confidence and their resilience from you. So being visible is very important, or being there. I mean, you don't have to be physically visible if not possible, but giving them a call, giving the head of IT a call, telling him, I understand you're going through a lot and we're relying on you and all this. And I would be looking for an update maybe in 3 hours' time if you can. Just this, and if there is anything I can do to help and things like that. This is very supportive because at the end of the day, leadership is not a position. It's how you behave and how you interact with your team.
I think it's a really interesting observation that about visibility because you've got 1,000 things to do. And yet your head is going at 1,000 miles an hour, but you still calmly make sure you're seen is really important. I'm interested in communications. We've touched on communications in just about every answer we've had from you so far, Hania. Who are your priority communications and how do you make sure they get done?
So the priority number one in the crisis was the staff. Make sure that they are doing well and that they are surviving and all this. So we had our call tree activated and we had to check on each and every member of the staff. I can't remember, maybe twice a day or something like that in the difficult times. And of course, at the same level, our other priority is the customers, because at the end of the day, we are in a service business, so we need to serve our customers. So our corporate team communicated with the corporate customers to advise them that we were accepting cash in our branches, because as you touched upon it earlier, Tarek, cash was a big issue during this time. Cash was very scarce. People were relying on cards. And all of a sudden, the shops started rejecting cards. So people had to have cash with them. So we managed that through accepting the deposits from the corporate customers and replenishing the ATMs in the branches and sending messages to the customers that we have cash available in the branches. We had to lower our ATM withdrawal limit to be able to cover a larger number of customers. And I remember I was in the Maidi head office on the Corniche in Maidi, and I was in my office and I saw the queue of the customers, a very, very, very long queue. But I looked at it with real pride because I was happy that we were able to accomplish our purpose and serve our customers in such a very difficult time.
And actually, if I remember, Hania, I mean, the HSBC brand really helped at that time, didn't it? That sort of global connectivity gave people real sort of confidence in the organization as well.
Of course, I mean, customers really trust the brand. And I think one of the things that really came up during the crisis, and it was even broadcast on one of the television channels, is that maybe the only bank that is able to serve its customers is the HSBC in Egypt. Because again, the money transit companies, they refused to move money at this time. So we were not able to replenish the off-site ATMs. We were only able to replenish the ATMs in the branches. And people kept calling us, me and the other members of the senior team, and asking which branch to go to and which branch has available cash. And this really came out on one of the channels.
John, just to give you a perspective, there are a couple of things that I picked up from Hania and that are not only in banking, but are applicable in a few other places. This idea of a call tree in an emergency, that you have key people and their numbers and their access. And of course, if I had, learning from this crisis, landlines are key. So people have to keep a landline. Even when I worked in San Francisco, because of the earthquakes, we actually put in a landline because you don't know. And my wife and I had agreed where we would meet should there be a massive earthquake or whatever, all of that. But the other thing that is, if people go to an ATM and cannot get cash, panic begins to set in, because that's how you get a bank run. And that then creates chaos, right? Especially in the absence of police, because there was no security for a period of time at the beginning of the revolution in 2011. So you've got quite a lot. I mean, what Hania was touching on is just the surface, because underneath there was a lot of other serious issues that you don't normally get. So it's almost like wartime preparation. What do you do in the case of war when a lot of things that you normally have don't exist? And I think that planning, no matter, even if some of it goes wrong or isn't there, that practice of and so the question I wanted to ask Hania is, did creativity play any part in finding solutions to some of the problems? I mean, creativity on the spot during this crisis.
Of course, I mean, yes, because I mean, it's not only creativity, it's the ability to think at the time of the crisis. Because some people, when they panic, they get stuck and they just cannot think. So from some things that are very simple, like the landlines that we dug up and so on, to, running queries, for example, to know which off-site ATMs had cash and direct our customers to those until they, the cash ran out from them, running queries to know our position, our transfers. So yes, there was a lot of creativity and a lot of improvisation at the time. Maybe improvisation is more realistic in this situation. So yes, we had to do a lot of thinking, and we had to be creative, of course, to come up with the solutions and face our challenges.
Yeah.
So what we've said already is that you can't anticipate everything. That's what your question is suggesting, Tarek, and what your answer talks about, Hania. But there are some things we can do to prepare. You talked about call tree, for example. What else can a responsible senior team do to perhaps get 50% of the answer, to prepare some ground? What can we do? Hania, what can you do to put in place?
You have your crisis management plan. Okay, so you back up the systems, you manage your liquidity, you manage your operations. So you have your backup for everybody to work from an alternate location and all this. So all this is there, and it is tested and it is drilled every year or whatever. So people really go and use their backup locations. I mean, that was before the time of online working and all this and the corona. Yeah. And you have a backup for your system and all this. So the crisis plan is a big document. in which you prepare for the alternative scenarios that can happen, and you try to cover the risks that you have. So the starting point is the risks that an organization can face. And if this scenario happens, what will be the alternative scenario? So it's a large document that documents all this, and it's drilled periodically. But again, as I said, no matter how well you prepare, there are certain things that will go perfect according to the plan. And I'm not talking about those things, but I'm talking about the message I'm trying to say is that no matter how hard you prepare, there will always be gaps, and we learn from the gaps that we face.
I think, John, one of the things that, and Hania, we found this many times, is that you come up with this wonderful document. As Hania said, it's normally very, very large. It sits on the shelf. You drill it maybe every 3 months, every 6 months. You typically do it on a quiet Saturday. And you actually do it because it's convenient to do it on a quiet Saturday. You never do it on a busy Friday because you're too busy on a Friday to do it. And it's never, in my experience, it's never real enough. And let me give you a quick example. You might switch your backup data center on a Saturday afternoon. The only way you can test the backup data center is to run live for a couple of weeks on it. And so I think sometimes companies compromise their testing just to make it too easy. And they never actually confront the really, really difficult things that are likely to happen in real time. So, Hania, I'm not sure if you agree with that, but that was almost my sense. We made the testing all a bit too easy, the drilling all a bit too easy.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first school, we decided that how would we operate if all the instructions and all the crisis management documentation was in the bursar's office, and the balloon went up not on a Monday morning, but on Christmas Eve. How do we get through the building, through the alarms, through the locking of the doors to the right place where we find the plan, and then set up the communication center? Where will that be? Where will the phones be? Where will the meetings be? We tried to walk through the because the nightmare is that these things happen at the wrong time. And you've got to really stare into the abyss of what just might go wrong. Yeah, and I'm fascinated by that. So Hania, back to you. Drilling. You drill a document. I've never heard that phrase before, but it's a good phrase. You really tear it apart and see how it works. Who does that? Seriously, who does that piece of work? Is it you? Is it a small team? Is it the geeky person in the organization that loves to talk about crises? Who is it?
No. It's everybody. It's everybody because everybody has a role. So, I mean, in the back office areas, they have to test the operations from an alternate site, for example. So everybody takes part in this. Of course, there is somebody who is responsible for the crisis management document. And usually it's the chief operating officer because he's responsible for the entire operations of the bank and the infrastructure and so on. But everybody takes part in this, and it's done quite seriously. But at the end of the day, there are things that come up that you never thought of, and this is where you have to improvise and where you have to think and so on.
It just reminded me when I was working for Bank of America here in London. Bank of America, as you may know, the original headquarters was in San Francisco, so there was this mindset or culture that a big earthquake can happen everywhere or anywhere, and you need to make sure you've got backup. So you come to the UK, and the UK was the back office for all of Europe, 15 countries. So you had front offices in all the countries, but all the back office was in Bromley, actually. And what's fascinating was in Croydon, which is not too far, they had 250 positions that were dark room, basically dust covers on the machines, if you will, and only activated every 3 months or 6 months, as Robin was referring to, where actually most of the staff had to show up there to operate and switch on the lights and see how everything. Not only that, but Croydon was also the computer backup center. So when a bomb did go off in the city at one stage, all the banks couldn't access their data, but Bank of America could. So sometimes you, as you say, you don't expect this, but you have to practice, you have to drill, and you have to rewrite the procedures or update them, if you will, every now so often, because you learn from other people. Stuff happened here. And today, actually, the risks keep on evolving. You think of cyber, you think of all kinds of other things. Even your backup generators. Do we have enough diesel to run for 2 weeks if we needed to, or whatever, or solar panels now, or whatever?
Yeah.
So you have to keep on evolving and operating in this space.
And sometimes during the testing, you find out that, for example, you have a system which is connected to the central bank and it's not working from the backup site. So this is something that you have to attend to and to work on.
So that leads, John, beautifully into my next question. So one stakeholder we haven't mentioned in any detail, Hania, that's very close to your heart and mine while I was in the region, was the regulator. Now, we all know that regulators now are very focused on this topic. I mean, any insight into how you dealt with the regulator?
So at the beginning, dealing with the regulator was on a very senior level, and they used to hold their meetings not in the central bank, in other locations. And because of, there were a lot of things changing in the economy, so they issued a lot of regulations. And at the beginning, the regulations were verbal. And by the time they reached us, we were sort of, unfolding what was meant. So we kept going back to the junior team and trying to understand and how to implement and so on. So at the beginning, it was very difficult for about a week or so. And then they started issuing instructions or regulations that were very, tight, like restricting the transfers of foreign currency and so on. And once we received those regulations, we had to have a meeting with the compliance head and understand the effect on the procedures and so on, and act very quickly. And then the regulator requested to have a focal point in each bank. I was the focal point, so everything was communicated to me. And we took it from there, but it was very difficult at the beginning because we had to understand what was meant by the regulations and implement. And some of the regulations were issued in a retroactive manner, so it was really difficult. But we managed in the end. I mean, to get through.
What about the board and the chair and the CEO managing up? We talked about managing to customers and managing to staff, managing the compliance, the regulator. Hania, what about the bosses, higher ups than you, the regional, the big people up there?
It was not easy because at the end of the day, they are people, they are humans, and certainly the effect of the crisis on them is more than it is on us, because I mean they are more responsible, specifically the CEO. So again, it was a bit challenging because when we had this communication failure, the CEO was not in country; he was out of country. And when he came back, we updated him of the situation. And I would say he was suspicious that we were able to handle all this on our own.
Goodness.
Really, all this happened. But again, because of my calm attitude and so on, so I walked him through everything that we have done and the meetings that we were having. We were having meetings with the region twice a day, at 10 in the morning and at 4 in the morning. And question number 1 was, is all the staff safe? So I had to activate the call tree in the meantime to make sure to answer this question. Question number 2 was about the branches and the ATMs, what was affected, what was looted, and so on. So there was a list of questions that I had to prepare for. He started attending the meetings with me and the other members of the crisis team. And then he got to this, reassurance that, oh my God, they are managing it and they are managing it well. And of course, he started, thinking of other risks and addressing other issues I haven't thought of or were beyond my thinking at that time. And it went well, but it took a lot of working and massaging and, calmness at the end of the day.
I'm not sure, John, who was working in the region at the time, but obviously they were very insightful questions.
For those of you listening in, that was Robin pointing to himself. I think that means that he was very grateful for what you did, Hania. I have to say, it sounds like. But, there are crises that happen quickly and there are crises that happen slowly. Boris Johnson was criticised during pre-COVID for not attending the emergency meeting because he didn't realise it was a crisis. He didn't spot it. One of the great leadership abilities is to see that this may be small right now, but this could become seismic. And we've got to get in there now and sort it out. And I think that's one of the things I get from you, Hania, is that capacity to see forward, that this small thing could have significant impacts.
Yes. The ability to see through and predict what's going to happen and have a sense of what lies down the line. This is very important.
Actually, the other thing I pick up on this is because Robin was sitting there in the region and he was in the region, I think he could probably relate and understand, the communication and what the risks are and what they are, and the work, that fantastic work that you and your team were doing. The struggle sometimes is when an organization structure, like say, for example, you have a growing international company, forget that it's a bank, but you have a branch in Malaysia, but you don't have anybody in the region. So you're sitting in London, you're sitting in the US or whatever, sitting in Europe, and you're saying, well, why can't you do this? You don't understand what's really going on the ground. And I think that is much more challenging, trying to explain to them the real situation on the ground and for them to get it. But having somebody in the region, like in the case of Robin, that helps quite a bit, because then Robin has to explain to the guys in London or wherever that we've got this under control. This is what's going on. It becomes another layer, if you will. Right? I mean,
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And also to build on something that John said, sometimes you have to have the skill to recognise the crisis. But often I've worked for people, and Hania, I'm not going to mention any names in the greater bank, who turn everything into a crisis. So sometimes you have to have the ability to dispel it. No, this is not a crisis. We can actually manage this, right? So you can have that as well, right?
Yes, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get people panicking, and sometimes as a boss, you've got to say, this is not yet at that level.
No, we've got this under control. It's not an issue.
That's very true. It's very true. And I remember, many times I walked into an office and we have this and we have that. And then at the end of the day, okay, what we are going to do is 1, 2, 3. And this is contained and it doesn't require anybody worrying about it, and I'll handle. And usually I went out of the office with this person very content of what I'm doing and how I'm addressing it. You think so? Yes, I think so. So again, it goes back to the point of knowing the team. Your boss is in the team. So you need to understand your boss. You need to understand how they think, and you need to understand how to handle them. And just, give them the assurance when you are comfortable, or tell them that you have doubts and you will work on it and come back to them.
Yeah. So sometimes, Hania, it was about just getting to your boss first before someone else got to your boss, who always used to create crises, right?
Yeah. I have one last question, if anybody else is okay with that.
Go for it, John.
And that is, I have a lovely phrase, which you all know: don't waste a good crisis. It is an opportunity to learn a lot of things. And so therefore, do you do a post-match review and after crisis conversation? What does that mean for you? How did you do that?
Of course, we did. We captured the events, and we looked at the learning points, and we updated our crisis document. So yes, there were a lot of learnings from the different crises which took place in the last 10 years of my career, and every time we used to look back and look at the lessons learned and capture them.
Are there any more questions from anybody else?
No, I could talk for hours.
It's lovely to have you on board with us.
It really is. Fantastic. I've made
so
notes.
much.
I just do a little summary if that's okay for everybody.
Can I just add one point before you close, John? Also, the duration of the crisis matters, because if it prolongs, then the team gets tired, and you have to be mindful of this, and you have to give them rest, and so this is also an important point to note.
I agree with that.
Hania, thank you. Thank you so much. I've decided that when we get to that desert island, I don't want Tarek or Robin, I want you. You'll help us get...
You can have the three of us, don't worry.
Knock us into shape. What have I learned? Resilience is very important. Keep calm, you will exude resilience. Choose the right team with the right temperaments. Don't crowd the team, but be visible. Communicate to staff, customers, regulator, board and CEO. Try and prepare a communication tree in advance. In fact, practicing, I can see a critical instant can be quite useful, and also drill through your documents as often as you can, even though it doesn't have all the answers. Is your communication process earthquake proof? I got that from Tarek. I hope it doesn't happen, but expect it to happen. Have the backups, review your processes, look at your scenarios and risk. Not everything will go to plan. Check the well-being of your staff, and recapping is very important. I've captured a fraction of what we've talked about in our meeting today. I hope you, our listeners and our watchers, have enjoyed this conversation too. We are not in crisis mode at the moment. It's Friday morning, but we hope we'll never be in crisis mode to face these things. Hania, the way you have had to face them, my goodness me, what a story. So thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone for listening. We are here to support you if ever you want to get in touch and ask a question, or if you want us to come and do some work with you as a person or as an organization, we're very happy to do that. And we're on all the platforms. We take questions. We like having guests. Share us with your friends, follow us and share. Please be part of our community and be part of our conversation, because we really value that. And we'll be back with you soon on another topic. The team and I will sit around and talk about what the topic is going to be, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Hania, thank you for your presence today.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.